All right, so we're going to do the opening prayer. Zara is going to be the umze for this evening. So please continue on.
Lance, I just want to make sure I've got this correctly. I read all the way through which page?
We'll go through pages 1 through 6, and then 8 and 9. That'll be good for tonight. 1 through 6, and then page 8 and 9.
Okay. I'm going to do my best with number 9. Okay. All right. All mother sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience, may they experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly I will establish them in the state of unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. All mother sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience, may they experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly I will establish them in the state of unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. All mother sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience, may they experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly I will establish them in the state of unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. Thus, until I achieve enlightenment, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. Until death, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. From now until this time tomorrow, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. We take refuge in the kind root and lineage lamas. We take refuge in the deities of the mandalas of the yidams. We take refuge in all the exalted Buddhas. We take refuge in the perfect Dharma. We take refuge in the excellent order of the Sanghas. We take refuge in all the noble Dakas, Dakinis, and Dharma guardians, possessors of the eye of wisdom. We take refuge in the kind root and lineage lamas. We take refuge in the deities of the mandalas of the yidams. We take refuge in all the exalted Buddhas. We take refuge in the perfect Dharma. We take refuge in the excellent order of the Sanghas. We take refuge in all the noble Dakas, Dakinis, and Dharma guardians, possessors of the eye of wisdom. We take refuge in the kind root and lineage lamas. We take refuge in the deities of the mandalas of the yidams. We take refuge in all the exalted Buddhas. We take refuge in the perfect Dharma. We take refuge in the excellent order of the Sanghas. We take refuge in all the noble Dakas, Dakinis, and Dharma guardians, possessors of the eye of wisdom. Until I attain the heart of enlightenment, I take refuge in all the Buddhas. I take refuge in the Dharma, and likewise in the assembly of the Bodhisattvas. As the previous Buddhas embraced the enlightened mind and progressed on the Bodhisattva's path, I too, for the benefit of all sentient beings, give birth to bodhicitta and apply myself to accomplish the stages of the path. Until I attain the heart of enlightenment, I take refuge in all the Buddhas. I take refuge in the Dharma, and likewise in the assembly of the Bodhisattvas. As the previous Buddhas embraced the enlightened mind and progressed on the Bodhisattva's path, I too, for the benefit of all sentient beings, give birth to bodhicitta and apply myself to accomplish the stages of the path. Until I attain the heart of enlightenment, I take refuge in all the Buddhas. I take refuge in the Dharma, and likewise in the assembly of the Bodhisattvas. As the previous Buddhas embraced the enlightened mind and progressed on the Bodhisattva's path, I too, for the benefit of all sentient beings, give birth to bodhicitta and apply myself to accomplish the stages of the path. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. And the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from the suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. Om Vajrasattva Samaya, help to protect my vow, to purify myself. May you remain firm with me. Grant me the complete satisfaction. Grow with me, be loving towards me. Grant me the attainments to master the powers beyond body and nature. Show me all the deeds of body, speech, and mind. Make my heart good, virtuous, and auspicious. Revel in the bliss of the four joys, O Blessed One, who embodies the essence within me. Do not abandon me. Grant me the realizations of the indestructible nature. Make me one with you. Thus I signify my unity with the non-duality. Ah. Okay. Om Vajra Sattva Samaya Manu Palaya Vajra Sattva Tinopa Tishta Drido Mi Bhava Suto Kyo Mi Bhava Supo Kyo Mi Bhava Anu Rakto Mi Bhava Sarva Sita Mi Prayatsha Sarva Karma Sutsami Sitan Sitan Shriya Kuru Hung Ha 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 Ho Bhagawan Sarva Tathagata Basra Mami Munsa Basri Baba Ma Ha Samaya Sattva A. Om Basra Sattva Samaya Manu Palaya Basra Sattva Tanopa Tishta Dredo Me Bhava Sutokyo Mi Bhava Supokyo Mi Bhava Anu Rakto Mi Bhava Sarva Siddhai Mi Prayacha Sarva Karma Sutsami Sitan Shreya Kuru Hung Ha 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 Ho Bhagawan Sarva Tathagata Basra Mami Munsa Basri Bava Maha Samaya Sattva A. Om Basra Sattva Samaya Manu Palaya Basra Sattva Tenopa Tishta Dredo Mi Bhava Sutokyo Mi Bhava Supokyo Mi Bhava Anu Rakto Mi Bhava Sarva Siddhai Mi Prayasha Sarva Karma Sutsami Sitan Shriya Kuru Hung Ha 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 Ho Bhagawan Sarva Tathagata Basra Mami Munsa Basri Baba Maha Samaya Sattva A.
Awesome. That was awesome.
Excellent. Very good. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Oh, certainly. Of course. You did a wonderful job.
Thank you.
Next, the Tibetan.
Actually, that was Sanskrit.
Sanskrit. Okay.
No, I was saying next, she can conquer the Tibetan side.
Oh, next to Tibet. Yes, indeed. Yes. So we'll do the prayers in Tibetan. Okay. So tonight we're going to talk about the Bhumis. So all this stuff that we've been talking about, all this path of accomplishment and the path of accumulation and the Guru Yoga and all this stuff is all to get us to the point of being a Bodhisattva. Being a Bodhisattva is a wholly enlightened being. Bodhi means enlightenment, and Sat is a being, and Sattva is a holy being. So it's the holy enlightened being. So this is the path of human beings on their way to become Buddha. So before we can become Buddha, we have to become a Bodhisattva. Before we can become a Bodhisattva, we have to be a human being. And so the levels, would be like there's a beginner. And then from a beginner, then we become a practitioner, where we're practicing and we're doing the different practices, we're studying and so on. And then we go on to be a yogi or a yogini, a yogin, which is one who is in union with the doctrine, one who's in union with the Dharma, one who's in union with the practices. So a yogi. And then from a yogi, then we would progress to a siddha. To a siddha is an accomplished one. It's S-I-D-D-H-A, siddha. So a siddhi, S-I-D-D-H-I, siddhi is an accomplishment. So we accomplish many, many things, many siddhis, we're accomplishing those. And the one who is doing that is referred to as a siddha. So we would become a siddha, and then we would be ready to enter into the Bhumi path. So the first stage of the Bhumi path is called the path of seeing. So it's something that we begin to recognize with all the practices, all the things that we've done, all the things that we've understood and so on about the way the Dharma works and so on, that we recognize that we are ready. It's not necessarily your teacher is recognizing that, or any of your brothers or sisters are recognizing that. It's something that you recognize. So your way forward becomes clear. The path of seeing. I see what I need to do now. So it's based on everything that we've been talking about up to this point. So the word Bhumi is an interesting word. And one level, an outer meaning, is that it means levels, that there are these levels, stages of being a bodhisattva. And there's 10 of them. An inner meaning means that it is like the earth, a fecund seed of enlightenment. Fecund, fecundity? You're familiar with that word? So it's like pregnant with all kinds of possibility, all kinds of potential. So these bhumis are fecund seeds of the earth. So it's an analogy, it's a metaphor, because each one of these becomes a purification of the bodhisattva. So we're doing all this stuff to get to this point. Then we go through these further rounds of purification to be able to get to the very top, to the pinnacle. And then there is like this gap between the very pinnacle, the 10th bhumi, and then there's this gap that then is this leap that one becomes the Buddha. So what we are purifying on the bhumis is all the last vestiges of our obscurations of wisdom. By the time we get to this, our emotions are taken care of. It's not that emotions don't come up and that we don't see emotions, but there's no attachment, there's no aversion to them. So you can see that there's a great deal of work that has been done to be able to get to that point, to not have the emotions be issues for us on the Bhumi path. Now we are working on the obscurations of wisdom, of knowledge, of understanding of who we are, very, very subtle, very profound things. So it says here in this outline, it says, Bhumi is the wisdom awareness supported by absorption, by which the continuous mental stream of the practitioner directly realizes the selflessness of all phenomena. So people have written books on that sentence. So the wisdom awareness, coming to understand that there is this wisdom, this how would I say, this field of wisdom that we are exposing ourselves to. Doesn't mean that we are a master of this wisdom at this point, but it means that we recognize this field of wisdom, all these things that have to be purified, and maybe some have been purified. And this is supported by absorption. So if you remember a week ago or 2 weeks ago, we talked about the four absorptions and the four formlessnesses of meditation. So just give me a second here. So in the four absorptions, we're talking about that there is mental activity, and there is joy in the mental activity, and there is equanimity in the mental activity. So there's joy and equanimity, and there's a sense of well-being. So these are characteristics of being at the first level of mental absorption. The second level is the mental activity stops. The investigation stops. So much of what we've been learning, stops. We don't need it anymore. It's like the boat that crosses over the river to get to the other side. Once we get to the other side, we don't need the boat anymore. So we don't need this mental activity, this vipassana, this vipassana meditation, the shamatha meditation and so on. It's not necessary. The generation stage isn't necessary. We are there. We are in that state. So the mental activity stops. The joy begins to slow down. And the equanimity, there still is equanimity. There still is an awareness of balance and of sameness with nature, with all phenomenal nature and so on. And there is still a sense of well-being. Then the third level is the joy stops. So what that means is the joy is not a characteristic. It's just one taste. Everything is the same. Everything is just, it's not even happiness or suffering or sadness or joy. It's just the way things are. And it's okay. It's just being satisfied, just being peaceful, no expectations. So the joy stops, and the equanimity and the sense of well-being become much more subtle. They become less aware, less pronounced. Like, they're less a factor in our thoughtfulness, in our sense of being, the equanimity and the well-being, our sense of well-being now. We just become very quiet, very peaceful, very simple. So maybe in meditation, you've experienced these things. Maybe it's just been for a moment, but one moment, one glimpse builds on the next glimpse, and so on like that. So we establish a pathway to be able to experience this. And then the fourth level is the sense of well-being stops. So the sense of well-being would give you a sense of that I'm okay, but they may not be. They can do this if they want to, but now there's absolutely no difference between us now. I don't have this sense of well-being. There's no pridefulness or anything like that. And the equanimity is left as being very, very subtle. So at this point, there's no joy, there's no sense of well-being. The equanimity is very subtle. So we're really losing a sense of self. It's the selflessness of self. So in many of the teachings that the lamas do with the Mahamudra and so on like that, we talk about this in greater detail. So there's the selflessness of self, and then there's the selflessness of phenomena or multiplicity. So first we have this selflessness of self, that I become impermanent. I become emptiness. That there's no longer a sense of, well, here's my body, here's what I look like, here's what I say, here's what I do. I'm no longer Lance. I'm just nature. I'm just phenomena. I'm just what everything is. And then that sense of phenomena then goes away after this. That's the next big step. That's what we do on the Bhumis. So we go back. So it says, supported by absorption, which I just listed for you. And that was last week's teachings, chapter 18. I was just reading from that. So you should have that outline on that. Okay. Supported by absorption, by which the continuous mental stream of the practitioner directly realizes the selflessness of phenomena. So this is being on the Bhumis. So as we're going around, I've used the example of a spiral many times, going around in a circle. And so the circles at this point have been very, very big, very, very broad, and very deep, and so on all the time. Are we doing okay? I see there was a stutter there with the internet connection. Is everybody okay? You can hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, very good. Thank you. All right. So we're going around in these circles. So now we're getting to these Bhumis. So there's these 10 last circles, and these circles are this spiral. And so the spiral is getting very tight. So every time the circle goes around, the spiral goes around, it raises up a notch. So there's 10 notches, there's 10 spirals. And as it goes up, it's getting very, very formed, like a cone, like a spiral, and very narrow at the tip. So, and as we do that, we are purifying more and more and more our awareness of phenomenal nature, our awareness of the multiplicity. It becomes selfless. We may be aware of it from an objective point of view, but we no longer become that phenomenal nature. We are becoming much more Dharmakaya, the unborn, the non-conceptual, non-duality is becoming much more strong. But it's not a mental process that we're thinking about this. We just become that. We're becoming much more very, very, very subtle, very quiet. So the times that we recognize it is when we are pulled back, when we see what our misconception is, when we see what our habitual tendency is, when we see what the obstruction is, and we say, oh, I'm not quite purified. I've got to work on that particular bhumi. I got to continue working on that. But then when we achieve the siddhi, the accomplishment of that, then we rise up to the next level, not to fall back. So there's very little falling back. There can be plateauing, where you stay on a plateau, when you stay on a bhumi for, what we might consider to be a period of time. But there's not any, we're beyond falling backwards at this stage. But we can be pulled back onto the level before we can get to the next level. Excuse me a second. Does anybody have any questions about this? Okay. So as I said, Khenpo Samdup has a whole, bunch of teachings that are available online on YouTube that goes into a lot more detail about the selflessness of self and the selflessness of phenomena and so on. So it's well documented, and you can study that if you're interested. And if you need some help with that, finding it, I can help point you to it. So this is the description of the bhumis. So now what's the significance of this? So the significance of this is that this is our ground foundation. Successive levels of the Bodhisattva attains. One bhumi becomes the foundation for the next bhumi. So I've often used the analogy that one man's floor is another man's ceiling. So we may think that we've achieved a level and we've got this floor, but we don't realize that below us, or maybe we could realize that below us are many other beings who our floor is their ceiling. But now we have a ceiling up here, but that ceiling is someone else's floor, is our floor to be, is our ceiling. So we need to think, if we can think of it that way, can see that, it really helps to understand what our job is here, what we are doing. So the ground foundation. So remember that we talk about the ground, the path, and the fruition. So the ground is where you start. All this stuff that you have in your midst already. And you're becoming more and more aware of the subtle nature of this ground. All the outer stuff we recognize as all these things, lights, and we see the trees, and we see our house, we see all this stuff, but we start learning about the inner stuff. We start seeing that. And then through our meditation practices, we start experiencing the secret stuff, the very subtle stuff that happens at this ground level, this beginning level, this foundation level. Then as we progress along the path, on our path to enlightenment, this is what we're doing. That's where the perfection comes from, is being on the path. And then once we get to our destination, which is the fruition, which is enlightenment, we find that it was there the whole time at the ground. We just didn't recognize it. So much of what we are experiencing here on the ground, in the inner and in the secret level or the subtle level, was by virtue of traveling that path and getting to a point of fruition. And then we said, oh, I can do that now. I bring that back. Now I realize that my ground now has this inner quality to it, has this secret quality to it, this subtle quality to it. And then we travel the path again, and we find that there's another fruition. We bring that back. So it's no different from that. So we're like expanding ourselves, We're deepening ourselves, but at the same time, we're preparing to let all that go. We're seeing what our spiritual nature is. We're seeing our physical spaces, physical nature, our intellectual nature, how the three work together, ultimately to let it all go, to become pure spirit. Okay, any questions? Okay. So now we reached the first stage of the Bhumi, which is the path of seeing. And this path of seeing, excuse me 1 second. So this path of seeing is the guru within ourselves. The guru yoga is what allows us to recognize this. That now we are trusting what is happening within ourselves. This wisdom is within ourselves. Very subtle wisdom that everyone has, but is all blocked up. So now it's becoming that those blockages are becoming purified. Those defilements are becoming washed away. It's becoming cleansed. So now we can see because there's no blockages. Those blockages are the emotions. So the emotions, like I said, are gone at this point. So what we have here, the characteristic of this first Bhumi, is great joy that arises from the paramita of generosity. So here it's linking up now the 6 paramitas, the stages of perfection. So this great joy comes from this generosity of everything that we are being open and shared with all beings. Whatever it is, whether it's our physicality, whether it's our intellectuality, or it's our spirituality, that it becomes open to all beings. There's no holding back. There's no selfishness of this. Remember I said we've overcome the selfishness or the selflessness of self. So everything is just wide open. And in this state, there's just this great joy is the characteristic here. So then the second characteristic is stainless. The second Bhumi level is stainless, that arises from the paramita of moral ethics. And if you remember, moral ethics was discipline. So now there's this stainless quality, you know, that there's no, it's just pure. You know, there's nothing to stain it in any way. There's no other way to describe it. It's just pure and undefiled. The nature of the Bodhisattva at this level is just stainless. Then the third level is radiant. And this is that arises from the paramita of patience. It's radiant. So radiant like the sun. You know, that's always a good metaphor to come back to that because it's so recognizable in our consciousness, this radiant that arises from patience. That when we are patient, you know, the reason why we can be patient is because we have this inexhaustible supply of energy, this inexhaustible supply of skillful means, this inexhaustible supply of wisdom. Time means nothing. Place means nothing. We are just radiant like the sun. There's nothing to be impatient about. There's nothing to have expectation about. Just to be completely peaceful, radiant. So that's the third level. The fourth level is luminous. That arises from the paramita of perseverance. So luminous now is it It illuminates around us. There's light all around us. It's all darkness around us. If we were to withdraw, it would all be dark. But now, because of our radiance of this light, now all that darkness becomes our light. It becomes luminous. We are luminous. We are illuminating this. And there's different levels. We learn there's different levels that happen with this. We learn the different colors and so on. This is where we from the 5 Buddha families and so on, we learn, about the white, the red, the white, the yellow, the red, the green, and the blue, and the clear light. We've talked about the clear light as being the primal cause, being the primal, the pristine cognition, the rigpa, the clear light. So we become radiant with that. So this is luminous, the luminous quality of the clear light. So everything around us, we can see everything. We understand everything. We know everything. Then the 5th level now is very difficult to train in. So what this means is that arises from the paramita of meditative concentration. So this meditative concentration was very difficult. We had to go through a lot. We had to really, we really had to concentrate. We really had to work hard to be able to recognize all the vicissitudes of our lives and that which is holding us back so that we can have this meditative concentration. The meditative concentration is just pure mind. It's our true nature, is this meditative concentration. But what's happening is all these interruptions, all these things are always interfering with that peace of mind, with that true nature. So it takes a lot of work to be able to not pay attention to all those things, to let those things go. So we say that this is very difficult to train in, this level, to get to that point. This is the 5th level, the 5th Bhumi level. So it's the meditative concentration, which means being able to have one-pointed mindfulness and then being able to abide in that and to be able to just allow ourselves to transcend from that level. So then the next one, the 6th level, is obviously transcendent, that arises from the paramita of wisdom awareness, the mind as such. Very obviously transcendent. So now we recognize that there is this wisdom awareness and that we are in a state that is beyond, and being able to be stable in this state that is, a metaphor or analogy would be that we're like floating in all of this. Obviously transcendent, being able to see, being able, but not seeing with the eyes, seeing with the true nature, seeing what you become. All of all this becomes your nature. You are Dharmakaya, and being able to see all things just as your body, but it's not your body. It's just body. It's beyond the self. So this is obviously transcendent as the 6th level. The 7th level is gone afar. And this is that arises from the paramita of skillful means. Now, we didn't talk about this when we did the paramitas, but here, this is gone afar that arises from the paramita of skillful means, gone afar that we can go wherever we want. This is unimpededness. This is being able to to see all things as they are and realize that we are everywhere simultaneously. So there's no location. There's no need for location. It's just gone afar, far out.
So is this gone, really gone, or really, really gone?
It's really, really, really gone.
Really, really, really gone.
It's gone. Yes. Yes. That's a good point that you brought up because that, the prajna paramita, was at the beginning stage way back when. This was done a long time ago. This was to get us to this stage, but there's a whole lot of work in between that prajna paramita and the bhumis. Okay, so now level number 8, bhumi number 8, is immovable. That arises from the paramita of aspirations, vows, and wishes. So all the things that we have used as our motivation now has come to the fruition of being completely immovable now. We are stable. It is us, we are it. Beyond it, beyond any qualification in any way. Remember, it's non-conceptual and it's immovable. And then number 9 is good discriminating wisdom. So good discriminating wisdom that arises from the paramita of strength of the 10 powers of the Buddha. So the 10 powers of the Buddha, we're going to get to this, but if you look over on page 3 of the outline that I gave you, you will see that there are the 10 powers here. So I'm just going to read them quickly for you so you have a taste of what they are. Power over lifespan. Likewise mind. Necessary provisions. Karma. Birth. Wishes. Aspiration prayers. Miracles. Wisdom awareness, and power over dharma. These are the 10 powers of the bodhisattva who attains the 8th bhumi will attain these 10 powers. So it's a preview of coming attractions. So this is good discriminating wisdom. So now we can see, all these different things. We recognize all these different things and the way they play out and everything. At this point, remember I've said to you before, Ken Wilber, he said, we're all enlightened. We just don't recognize it. And once we recognize it, we say, oh, it was here the whole time. That was easy. But the thing that's difficult is living an enlightened life. That's what's difficult. And as we do that, we are cultivating these 10 powers. We become masters of these 10 powers.
Lance, what is number 3, the necessary provisions?
That you have what you need.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's not the cans of beans and what is it?
It means whatever you need, whatever practical things you need. It's very practical. This is very practical. That you have what you need to sustain yourself. You have the right food, you have the right clothing, you have the right, fluids that you need. You have what you need. You have the provisions. You have the intellectual necessities that you need. You have the time that you need. Whatever it is that you need.
That's very important. So it can be the cans of beans in your pantry.
Say that again.
I said it can be the cans of beans in your pantry.
It can be, yeah, sure.
Okay.
It's very practical.
All right.
Yeah. Remember, this is the trip of a human being. So we have our human condition that we have to take care of, but it's being taken care of in a very practical way that is allowing this spirituality to blossom, to be purified, and so on. You know?
Can you elaborate a little bit on number 6 and 7 on wishes?
Well,
and
let's come. You
and
mean
prayers.
what we're talking about here?
The 10 powers.
Or the 10 powers? Well, let's wait till we get to that, because I don't want to get too far ahead.
Okay.
Because things begin to explain other things as we move ahead.
Sounds good.
So I just want to give you a flavor of it. We're going to get to it. We won't be able to get to it tonight, but we'll get to it. And because, okay, I think that's the best way. So the good discriminating wisdom is being able to see all these things and knowing how to operate with all of this. Remember, I'll relate this. Remember in the story of the Buddha, when the Buddha was in the cave for 6 years and he became the starving Buddha. And he finally, he just got to the point where he realized that, it wasn't working. He didn't know what that meant. He didn't know why, but he realized that he had to leave. It wasn't working. And he went down into the valley and he met the goat herder girl, and she gave him food. And then he started eating and he got strength. And then he realized at that time he had his physical body. It's an important part of our enlightenment. We need to have that. We need to have our intellect. If his physical body was good, we'd have our intellect. We have our intellect. Now we have a sense of well-being and a sense of what it is that we're doing. We're able to concentrate and so on and develop our meditation. And then the meditation opens up and our heart is revealed. So it's very practical, being able to see this. So this good discriminating wisdom speaks to that.
So Lance, so the Buddha spent a long time trying to annihilate the importance of his body, right?
Correct.
And a long time beating on himself and starving and
6 years
trying to remove his body from the picture.
Yeah, because that's what the gurus were saying. This is the way to enlightenment. You got to get rid of the body. The body's the defiled thing that's holding you back.
So the little girl with the curd, he had reached discriminating awareness level enough to realize this was something to pay attention to.
Yeah. He said, yeah, I'm hungry, I'm going to eat. And then he began to put it together. Then he had the strength to be able to assemble the wisdom of what this meant. He didn't know it until he got his strength back. Does that make sense?
That cheese must have been really good.
Well, remember, it was over a course of time.
Yeah.
It didn't happen from one eating. It was over a course of many meals. Because if you remember the story, the villagers all came and they knew of these great, crazy yogis up in the mountains that were, starving themselves to death. And so they one of them came down and they were thrilled. They said, we all want to bring them food. So they all had a part of that. Okay, so now we go to number 10. So level number 10, Bhumi number 10 is cloud of Dharma. And this, that arises from the paramita of primordial wisdom. The perfection of primordial wisdom. So the primordial wisdom is the prajna paramita now at its purest level. Om Gate Paragate Parasam Gate Buddhi Soha. At his purest level, his most intense level, deepest level of samadhi. So this primordial wisdom of the true nature of the Dharmakaya. And it's called a cloud of Dharma because it's like a blanket that covers everything, protects everything, keeps everything warm. So it's not a cloud that obscures this realization. It's like a cloud, a blanket that covers and protects all that is there. So that's the 10 Bhumis. And altogether, this is the path that leads to Buddhahood. Now, when we reach this, what we are doing is purifying our knowledge. We're purifying our wisdom. We're purifying what it is to be a bodhisattva. And remember, the bodhisattva has the relative motivation and it has the absolute motivation. And the relative motivation is that I am the bodhisattva in order to help other beings. I exist for the sake of other beings, which is very profound. And it becomes the path. It is the path. We are doing this for the benefit of other beings. But the absolute motivation is that we are doing it for enlightenment, to become the Dharmakaya, to become the three kayas. And to do that, we have to let go of the phenomenal, of doing it for other beings, the holding on to being in this body, to being a bodhisattva, to let that go becomes the last vestige of holding on. So that's sometimes referred to in some books I've read as the 11th Bhumi, of letting that go. And then you let that go, and then now you become the Buddha. You become all these things, these 10 Bhumis now all come together and become the Buddha. So we become the ground, the path into fruition. We become the body, speech, and mind. The phenomenal nature becomes my body. All these things just all become the Buddha. It is what it is.
Lance, I look in the book. There's a pretty amazing set of distinctive abilities that are rendered at that rank. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're gonna get into that.
Okay.
You know. So now we're gonna dig a little deeper into what each one of these things mean. Is this okay? You want to do this? Okay. You know, the way I look at it, it is inspiration for us to work harder at whatever level we are at now. You know, for myself, you know, it gives me confidence that I'm on the right path, and it gives me confidence to keep working, you know, to purify more and more and more, because I recognize enlightenment, but I also recognize that leading an enlightened life is very difficult. Any other questions or comments at this point?
Yes, Lance?
Yes, sir.
it seems to me that as you continue to do this in your life and you get deeper and deeper into it, that inevitably some relationships in your life, if not many, that have been important to you, if not precious to you, will fall away because people will no longer know who you are. And they will, I don't think that aversion is the right word, but you will be unable to connect with them. And some of those could be pretty important relationships. Is that true?
Well, that's true, but it's also, you got to put it into the perspective of what you're going to accomplish in this particular lifetime. You know, at this stage in our lives, are we going to, you know, give everything up and put on a loincloth and go to a cave someplace and live this kind of a austere life? You know, are we going to do that? You know, in this life, it may not be, you know, it's just not reasonable. It's not practical for us to do it, you know, but in another life, maybe so. So, you know, so those relationships that we have now, you know, they may see some changes in the next amount of time that we have left to live, but it's not going to see us going off and doing these kinds of things, going off to a monastery in India someplace and doing these kinds of things. Unless you really got a drive to want to do that. But doesn't that make more sense?
Yes.
I can relate to what Gary was saying. And I've experienced the same in, you know, my circle of friends and family. Alienate some people because of the practices that I do and the things that I do. But at the same time, I would say that it goes the other way around too. It brings people in your life too.
Sure.
And in some unexpected ways that you're like, how did this happen? You know, and it's just, but at some point you're just kind of like, I'm on the path. I know what my wishes are. I know what I'm praying for, and I know what my practice is, and you just feel confident that you're just doing the right thing.
Well, that's right. You know, when I first experienced this, you know, I was in my 20s. I gave everything away. You know, my family, my wife, my first wife, my child, you know, all my possessions. You know, the only thing I kept was my guitar. You know, that was the only thing that I needed. You know, and that was my vehicle, you know, but the point is that, and I started rebuilding my life, you know, but I rebuilt my life in a purer way, in a simpler way. I had more discriminating awareness. I took more responsibility. You know, what I left behind was all the confusion, all the mental misconceptions that I thought I needed and so on. So it came with great pain for a lot of people. Much more for them than it did for me. There was a point, you know, I had to deal with some guilt later on, you know, but at the time there was no guilt at all. There was, you know, I was, you know, on the path.
Lance, I do have a question. So on the 10 Bhumis, I'm thinking that especially for the first 4, like great joy, stainless, radiant, luminous. And I think I have a, you know, hint of an answer in my mind, but how does a practitioner, how is somebody just like able to distinguish those from any afflictive emotions? How do we know that, for example, the great joy is not the same thing as like a momentary, some momentary happiness that, just happened that day, or, same thing with stainless or radiance. I just feel radiant that day because something happened in my life. But how do you know it's the result of the practice versus something?
Well, once again, we're going to get into, the more detail about this, but it becomes stable. At this point, there is no emotion. To get to this point, the emotions have been dealt with. You can see the emotions, but there's no attachment, there's no aversion.
And speaking of that, I just, you always say that when you do the meditation, we're not necessarily suppressing the emotion, but we don't have any attachments to the emotions. And to me, that's a very important, difference to have between the two.
Of course.
That, so there's a lot of people that start meditation, they're going to be like, oh, I'm meditating, I'm going to get rid of emotions. But they're going to be like shortly in like a whirl of hurt, realizing that this is not the reality of meditation. What you're coming into is that you don't have, like you say,
affected by them.
Right.
And many people, in my, years of talking with people about this, so many people come and they say, I want peace of mind, I want to, I say, it'll come. We talk about all these things. And then 2 years later, they finally realize, what it was that, oh, this is what it is. This is what I wanted. And here it is now. I have made progress on this, and I can see that I have greater peace of mind now than I did before. The things are all still there, but right. I don't have the attachments and the aversions to them.
Right. We're still in samsara.
We're still in samsara. We're still breathing.
We still see this. We're still breathing in. We're still experiencing. We're still touching. You're still burning us. We still feel joy or sadness or grief or all that. But just the attachment is not there.
The attachment's not there, or the aversion. And that is just symbolic, just saying that means there's no ignorance, there's no delusion, there's no hatred, the aversion, there's no attachment, the desire, there's no jealousy. If you lose it or you don't have it, there's no risk, there's no fear, there's no greediness, there's no pridefulness. So the 5 poisons and the 84,000 emotions now are just floating around. We're not a prisoner of them anymore. We're not enslaved by them anymore. They're not like the ring in our nose pulling us around anymore.
All right. Thank you.
So this is why we say liberation, that we are liberated from these things. Can we liberate ourselves from these attachments, from these jealousies, from these things? How do we liberate ourselves? We liberate with the antidotes. What are the antidotes? The antidotes are meditation. The antidotes are generosity. The antidotes are, the different thing, mindfulness, the different parts that we've talked about. In when we talked about the 5 poisons, what comes out of it? What is the result? Are the 5 wisdoms, the all-pervading wisdom, the wisdom of equanimity, the mirror-like wisdom, the wisdom of discriminating awareness, the all-accomplishing wisdom. How much do we abide in those things? Abiding, how much do we live in those? Do we dwell in those? So to your point, maybe one day I'm having a good day and, a certain situation comes up and I can say, oh, really, I've really accomplished something. I can see this wisdom. I can see how I overcame this. But the next day, it comes from another direction that you didn't expect and you didn't have any wisdom at all that day. So it's all part of the path. And we all, we all are in a hurry. We all want to get there. We all want a magic bullet, but it takes lifetime. It's taken us lifetime after lifetime after lifetime to get to where we are now. And that's great. But there's lifetime after lifetime after lifetime after this lifetime to further the perfection. And to say, okay, that's my job. I'll do it as a bodhisattva. Okay. So let's dig into this a little bit deeper. And now let's talk about great joy. So this is the entranceway. This is the first part of the Bhumis. This is the path of seeing. Entering into this is the path of seeing. So here it says, this great joy that arises from the paramita of generosity, the ground Bhumi, coming closer to enlightenment and benefiting sentient beings. Coming closer to enlightenment and benefiting sentient beings, because we're still working with sentient beings. We're not exclusively in the hut somewhere in the mountains by ourselves. We may be there for periods of time, but then we come back out and we got to test what we do. It's real easy to stay up in the mountains and develop a spiritual pride. But until we come back into society and we test it, that's the tempering, that we really see the power of the process. And we see what it is that we can, do we really have the city? Or do we just think we have the city? Wishful thinking or something. So we got to engage. This is one of the problems that the Hinayana, that the Arhats and the Pratyeka Buddhas have. They would stay by themselves until they attain enlightenment. But then when something would happen, when they would die, they were totally unprepared for what happens in the bardo, because their resolve had not been tested in the crucible of society, of the bardo of living, and wasn't prepared for the bardo of death. So,
that's a very important thing that you just said.
Yes, what's that?
At least to me, that there are great similarities to the chaos and suffering of the life that we're living, that has a purpose to it, and what we experience in the bardo, which is also suffering.
Well, we determine that. That's our choice. This is the bardo of living. This is the bardo of living. There's 6 bardos. This is the bardo of living. It's this bardo of living that is the great gift that we gave ourselves to be able to prepare ourselves for the bardo of death and the bardo of reality.
That's a conundrum.
How do you mean?
Well, as you come into life as a baby and as a child, life begins to often steer you in the wrong direction and teach you all the mistakes to make. Usually does.
This is true.
Usually does.
So what is the wind at your back? What are your karmic seeds? How are they influencing you in the direction that you move amid all those causes and conditions? So that's what we're preparing now, are the karmic seeds that will give us the strength to navigate through those causes and conditions in virtue, in wholesomeness, in selflessness.
Lance?
Yes, sir.
You mentioned being in a hurry. And I would agree, we're all impatient, especially with these sorts of carrots dangling in front of us. But in the book, it talks about accomplishing all the bhumis in 3 limitless kalpas.
Right.
That's a what?
Yes.
That's a long freaking time, huh? But then it says, and I want a little vocabulary here. Then it says, with extraordinary perseverance, one can compress this into one antakalpa, or some even into a mahakalpa. So the impatient one in me wants to know what a antakalpa and a mahakalpa is, so I can put it on my calendar.
Well, maybe it's my wishful thinking or my rationalization. I don't pay too much attention to those measures of time. I think that they're metaphors and long passages of time and so on. And I feel liberated by not being controlled by them.
But it's meant, even a kalpa is meant to suggest a lot of what a long period of what we perceive to be time.
I think they're cultural things, in my opinion. They're cultural techniques to help people to prepare themselves for humility. Not to be in a hurry and like that. If we said, oh, you can do this in 3 lifetimes, then you start setting goals for yourself. Well, what do I have to do in this lifetime? And then what do I do in the next lifetime? What do I do in the lifetime after that?
Like me, start on my calendar. Yeah.
My own schedule, So I let go of that stuff a long time ago.
Hey, Michael, if you're being reborn as a fruit fly, those kalpas will go a lot faster.
That's true.
Adrian.
Just that's the last, if you're having control of your birth, the last birth, just choose to be a human being, and there you go. You solve the issue.
You could be a lab rat, and they use the lab rats, because you can do things to them, and they have a very quick cycle of death and rebirth.
Well, there's not much time to develop, rat's lifetime. So I would probably have limitless rat incarnations. Right?
So our goal is to purify our virtue at this level now, so that we don't have to we don't have to worry about being reborn in the lower realms. And even if you've done heinous crimes that might warrant your being born in the lower realms, that in this lifetime, you can neutralize that karma in this lifetime. So it's again our responsibility to recognize and handle this stuff, not to suppress it, let it come up.
Have you been looking at my rap sheet?
Well, we all got a rap sheet, right? The white stones and the white stones and the black stones. But it's our attachment to that, you see, that becomes our fault. If we attach to that, then that's our fault. Yeah, we all got black stones, we all got white stones. But if we're attaching to that, or we have aversions to that, that's our fault. Can we liberate from our attachment to that and say, okay, I'm leading a life of virtue now. How does it say it in the prayer? It says, wait a minute. In the 4 thoughts that turn the mind to the Dharma. It says, in the three lower realms and then in the three higher ones, there is not an instant of absolute happiness. I will avoid the root cause of my samsaric existence and practice the excellent path of peace to enlightenment. In other words, it doesn't matter how I got here. And it doesn't matter what I've been doing right now. It matters what I'm going to do now and continue doing. And can I make amends for all those things and by practicing the excellent path of peace to enlightenment. So all this stuff is all the stuff that we've been learning in the Dharma is all connected with each other. You know, you just can't forget this stuff after practicing once or twice or three times or something. You got to bring it back. You got to refer. You got to be able to see how it's all connected. Okay. So now back to this great joy, where it says the ground bhumi coming closer to the enlightenment and benefiting sentient beings. This is the purification of insight. The Guru Yoga is the insight. The Vipassana is the insight, the purification of this. So this is absolute truth bodhisattva. So the four methods of gathering disciples are the generosity, melodious voice, implementing the teachings, and living life as a practice. So part of our work as a bodhisattva is cultivating a Buddha field, a bodhisattva field, that means other beings around us, and being able to bring them in and having students who then become teachers themselves. It's part of the work of being a bodhisattva. So the four methods of gathering disciples are being generous with your disciples, giving them teachings, giving them practice, being able to have them recognize their accomplishments and so on. You know, not being selfish and saying, "Oh, I did this for you. I did this. I did that. I made you do this. I helped you to do that." Getting them to see that they did it themselves. That's the goal, to get them to do it themselves and so on. So this is, you know, the empathetic joy that we take when we do things like that. So then the melodious voice is having a way in which to be able to convey all this to them, you know, to be able to speak in the language that they can understand, whether it's a literal, you know, language of a nationality or something like that, or at the level that they may be, to be able to communicate with them at a level that they can understand and so on. You know, you may have 10 different disciples, but each one has a different level that you approach them on. Not everybody's going to be the same. So the melodious voice, they say there's 60 melodious voices. So whether they are, you know, the actual language skills that you have, or the way in which you talk with them, that you approach them, that they hear you with this melodious voice, that they are captured by your communication skills with them. And then implementing the teachings. We teach more by example than we do by what we do. You know, when, you know, years ago, I was reading and so on, and I finally asked, you know, a Lama to be my teacher. And then he's my teacher, you know, but we had limited access to each other because he lived up in the Dharma house and I lived in my house, and I'm working and all this kind of stuff. And then one day there came an opportunity to go on pilgrimage to India with my teacher. And I jumped on the opportunity. And I learned so much in those 3 weeks, just being with my teacher all the time and seeing how he implements the teachings, you know, how he has, and then it gave me the permission to be able to do it myself, to implement the teachings in myself. I saw how it manifests. And then the next one is living life as a practice. The humility of the teacher saying, you know, I'm practicing just like you are. You know, maybe I'm at this level here. You could be up this higher level. And I'm humble. I'm down here. I'm showing you all this stuff so that you can do this. Who do you think it is that teaches the Dalai Lama? It's these teachers who are at a lower level, teaching the Dalai Lama, who is the reincarnation, who is the emanation of Shenrezig. You know, so one teacher teaches this thing, and maybe he goes as far as he can, and another teacher comes in, he teaches, you know, a little bit higher level and so on. So the point is that we're all practicing, that we're living our life as a practice. So these 4 methods of gathering disciples is very important. This is one of the things that we have to keep coming back to analyze. Am I doing this? Am I being generous? Am I being, you know, thoughtful, having a melodious voice? Am I implementing the teachings in my own life? Am I really making changes? And am I living my life as an actual practice of doing these things?
Where would I see those 4 methods, Lance?
They're right here in this outline. You got the outline?
I'm on page 40.
You have the book?
Yes.
Well, maybe so. It's right here in chapter 19. It's in the first section, right below. It's right down here.
Page 35, Michael.
You see
At
it?
the bottom.
Oh.
It says number 1, great joy, and then right there. You see it?
Thank you. I just blew right by it. Thank you.
So here's the realization. Meaning of entering into all-pervading Dharmadhatu, through that one achieves the sameness of oneself and others. So if we can recognize that sameness, that equanimity between myself and others, the all-pervading Dharmadhatu, that we see this whole field as this body of the Buddha, through that one achieves the sameness of oneself and others, being able to see that. So we may not see it right now, but it's something to contemplate. It's something to meditate upon. So Dharmadhatu, it says here, what is Dharmadhatu? So it says Dharmadhatu is the uncontrived mode of abiding of all elements of phenomena, both samsara and nirvana, the truth realm or the truth sphere. So Dharmadhatu, the uncontrived mode of abiding of all elements of phenomena. So it's the display of Dharmakaya. Dharmakaya is radiant. Dharmakaya is luminous. We were talking about that as the 10 Bhumis, right? So all this is all there for us to be able to observe through our heart mind. So it's the uncontrived mode of abiding of all elements of phenomena, both samsara and nirvana. So it's all the dualistic nature coming together. The path of seeing. So note, it says realization at this level and beyond is stable in post-meditation. So at this point, you know, where we are in our development, you know, we're beginner practitioners, somewhere floating around in that category. So, you know, but it's good to have objectives. It's good to have goals. It's good to be having inspiration. So then it says the distinctive abandonment free from the 5 fears. So in this Bhumi, where there's the fear of not making a living. You know, I'll figure it out. You know, I don't need as much as I used to. I learned how to get along with $2,700 a year back in 1970. I still think I can do it, but that's a joke. You know, but someplace maybe I can. The fear of not getting praise. Some people need to have, you know, the support of praise. You know, and they're always asking, am I doing the right thing? Am I doing the right thing? And then the fear of death. To be able to say, okay, you know, I now of understanding more about the death and rebirth process. And I've been there many times. I've been born many times. I've died many times. And it's just a matter of letting go of the fear of that. That's no easy thing, but we have to develop that through our virtue, through our skillful means, through our wisdom, through the Dharma. Fear of rebirth in the lower realm. So we have to purify ourselves so that we won't go into a lower realm. But if we have to go into a lower realm, then we're going to go into a lower realm as a bodhisattva. You know, here we are in this planet Earth, you know, living here now, and you know, what we've been going through these past number of years or whatever, you know, is for many people, it's just like a living hell. They're completely tortured by it. They're completely, you know, obsessed with it and so on. But there are those others who are living that in that same lifestyle, in that same life, who are unaffected by it. And maybe they have some effect on some of these other people who are obsessed with it. And we have to radiate, we have to be luminous for those beings. So, and the last one is stage fright in large gatherings. So this goes to being a teacher, you know, and being able to communicate, to be able to have the confidence, to be able to learn how to put things together verbally, intellectually, so that you can be a good leader, so that you can be a good teacher. Being a bodhisattva, being a Buddha, is being a teacher. So part of this is teaching ourselves first, being able to have the conversation with ourselves. And then when we think we're ready, then we start talking to other beings, a little bit at a time, and overcoming whatever stage fright we might have in large gatherings and so on.
So the concept of stage fright was first rolled out by the Buddha, huh?
Yeah, I guess so.
I have to tell my sister that. So.
So the next one, we got a little bit more time. Anybody want to take a stretch or anything? I know I went past where we usually take a break, but you want me to continue? You want to take a break for tonight and call it a night tonight, or continue on for another 20 minutes or so? Okay.
Continue.
Okay.
Yeah, let's keep on going.
All right. So the next one now, the next bhumi we're digging into is stainless. So stainless, that arises from the paramita of moral ethics, discipline, free from the stains of immorality. So that we have, if we've done things, we made amends for those things. You know, that's why the 100-syllable mantra of Vajrasattva, the purification, is so important, because this is the purification of the things that we have done, the things that we've said, the things that we are in our body and so on. We need to purify that. Very important. It's a very important step. So we become the master of moral ethics. I'm on the second page now of this outline. The master of moral ethics, profoundly purified by the three causes, the Buddha, Dharma, and the Sangha. Profoundly purified by the three causes, the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. So what that means is the body of the Buddha, the speech of the Buddha, and the mind of the Buddha. The best teacher we have is Buddha. Buddha is within us. We are all potential Buddha. Buddha is not something out there that we're worshiping and praying to. Buddha is right here. And we need to allow that to come up and be our teacher. So the realization is the meaning of the Dharma Dhatu, and think, I must make a great effort to purify and accomplish everything. The meaning of supreme. So the meaning of the Dharma Dhatu, and think. So the meaning of the Dharma Dhatu, we go back to the first section where it defined Dharma Dhatu as the uncontrived mode of abiding of all elements of phenomena. So all dualistic nature now is gone. And now it's, I must make a great effort to purify and accomplish everything. To purify and accomplish everything. The meaning of supreme. So does this mean that we have to do every single little thing? Or are we doing this in a conceptual way that is saying that we have to purify this, our awareness of the emptiness. And by doing that, everything is empty. So we do this and realize that we're doing it all spontaneously for everything. So we abandon, the abandonment is appearances of the afflictive emotions are suppressed, but leaves the seeds which are thinner. Obscurations to knowledge are like cream rising to the top yet to be removed. So here it's saying appearances of the afflictive emotions are suppressed. So the afflictions are suppressed, but leaves the seeds which are thinner. So the seeds are still there. I said before that we're now past that, but here it's saying, so we need to put this in context with what's being expressed here. And I will certainly acquiesce to Gampopa, and maybe I need to change a little bit of my, mindset of what this is. It's been a while since I've read this too. So here's a clarification. This is what this is for, to clarify knowledge, to clarify wisdom. So the afflictive emotions are suppressed, but leaves the seeds which are thinner. Obscurations to knowledge are like cream rising to the top, yet to be removed. So this stuff is coming up, but yet to be liberated, to be removed. So our misconceptions, our habitual tendencies, and so on, our emotions. So stainless. So we always have to have that sense of humility. We have to give up on notions of dogma. This is the way it is, because one man's floor is another man's ceiling. What appears to be very rigid at this level, you get to this level, now all of a sudden it's all mutable. But we needed that stability. We needed that rigidity to maintain this level. But when we got here, it all just goes away. So we need to be able to allow that to happen. So one of the greatest things about being a teacher is that you learn, you know. So the next one is radiant. So that arises from the paramita of patience, which is forbearance. The appearances of Dharma and absorption are clear, and the light of the Dharma radiates for others. Trains in the Dharma without regard for one's self-aggrandizement continues to refine the three causes of enlightenment. Okay, so radiant, we'll start over again. That arises from the paramita of patience, which is forbearance. Forbearance of all the confusion, forbearance of all the suffering, forbearance of all the misconceptions, forbearance of whatever it is that is causing our suffering. The appearances of Dharma and absorption of clear. The appearances of Dharma and absorption are clear, and the light of the Dharma radiates for others. So we begin to see the Dharma. We begin to see it working. We begin to see what the doctrines of the Dharma are. We begin to see what the skillful means of the Dharma is or are, and we see the results of that. The light of the Dharma radiates for others, and we begin to see how others are affected by it, how others make the changes. Trains in the Dharma without regard for one's self-aggrandizement. So without one's arrogance, without one's ego entering into it, you know. And sometimes it's a challenge. Sometimes you see your ego coming up. Sometimes you see, you know, that conceit coming up. Okay, so you recognize that and you put it to bed. You recognize, you cut it off. You understand it as what it is, as a non-virtue. And then you continue to refine the three causes of enlightenment. And the three causes of enlightenment are the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. The cause of the Buddha's body, the cause of the Buddha's speech, and the cause of the Buddha's mind. So, you know, when Buddha Shakyamuni manifested, you know, he manifested his body so that he could talk to people. People can see him. That's what the teachers do. And the speech is the intellectualization of that so they can understand. And it's all a reflection of the mind, the Dharmakaya, the pure nature is all that. So when we go, Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Ahom, may my body, speech, and mind become inseparable from the body, speech, and the mind of the Buddha. That's what we're talking about. And this is radiant. So this is like the sun that is shining. So the realization is the supreme meaning of the Dharma as related to the cause of Dharma Dhatu. So that we're doing this in phenomenal nature for the benefit of beings of the phenomenal nature to recognize itself. So we can't get the trees to recognize itself, but we can get human beings to recognize itself. We can't get animals to recognize itself or insects, but we can get human beings to recognize itself. And that's what we're coming to do, is to recognize ourselves as Dharmakaya. Not realizing oneself as Dharmakaya, the minds of sentient beings are overpowered by negative emotions. These beings are wandering in samsara are my mothers. I supplicate Mother Tara, deity of great compassion. Please protect us. Please protect us. So this is what keeps us wandering in samsara. Is not understanding our mind is Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. Or I should say that we are Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. So the abandonment is the same as it says in Stainless, where the appearances of the afflictive emotions are suppressed, but leaves the seeds which are thinner. Obscurations to knowledge are like cream rising to the top. Obscurations are like cream rising to the top, and we remove it. So I think that's it for tonight. We'll leave here and we'll pick it up back again next week. But think about these things. Meditate on this. Read this. You know, we'll talk more about it.
Lance, I have a quick question. So in the book that in the outline of the Jewel Ornament of Liberation on page 25, I think, where you have your diagram here with where on all that is Dharma Dhatu? Is it, you know, encompassing all those spheres?
Yes.
So that's Dharma Dhatu.
Dharma Dhatu is all of that.
Okay. So I'm always getting confused about that. I think I'm getting a sense of the Sambhogakaya, Dharmakaya, and Nirmanakaya now, but okay.
All right, it is confusing. I agree. And let me see something. Dharmata is the primordially pure Buddha nature. The primordially pure Buddha nature, Dharmata. So that would be the ultimate awareness. In this diagram, it would be like the center is the Dharmata, the source from which all this comes. Or not the source, but it's just the nature of it. The nature of it. Then the Dharma Dhatu is the basic space of phenomena. So all phenomena is in this space is the Dharma Dhatu. And Dhatu means sphere or realm. And Dharma means the truth body.
So there's one more big circle around all those.
Well, it's not literal. It's limitless. So it's not a circle, so to speak. It's just right. Everything around it that is beyond comprehension. You know, these are just concepts that are helping us to just, you know, put some ideas together.
Right.
Not literal. So this Dharma Dhatu is the basic space of phenomena is emptiness. This basic space is emptiness. You know, this. So we have to put those two together, you know, to recognize those two together. And then we said that the Dharma Daya, Dharma Dharma Daya, is the source of all this phenomena. So this is like the womb, the source of all this phenomena. So I've always used the analogy of the Big Bang. You know, here's all this space and all this potential is just all in this space. And then all of a sudden, it's like there's this rupture, for lack of a better word. There's like this rupture in this energy. And then all of a sudden, all this stuff just comes spewing out. So that is that would be like the Dharma Daya, the source of all this phenomena, because that became all of what we call creation.
Is it Dharma Daya or Dharmo Daya?
Dharma Daya.
Dharma Daya.
It'll be like, it's like the womb. So here you see is a dualistic idea, it's a dualistic a concept that helps us to understand how this works together, because the male, the masculine, is this mind principle, and the feminine is the body principle. So all this happens within the body of the feminine. All this is born of the womb. You know, it's a figurative thing. It's just concept to help us to try and understand some of these, you know, very I can't think of the word now. Abstract things.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, so any other comments or questions? Welcome, Curtis.
Curtis, did you put the robes on? Your mic is muted.
We can't hear you. Your microphone is muted.
Just a little chilly.
Okay. All right. So if nobody has any questions, then we will do our dedication. So we need Umze for tonight. So Zara, you can unmute your microphone and take off your fur hat there. So we go to page 18. So we go to page 18, 19, 20, 21, and 22. Okay, so we'll all recite along with Zara. Go a little slow so that everybody can.
Okay. All right. Dorji Chang Talopa Naropa Marpa Milirepa Dharma Lord Gampopa Phagmo Drupa and Lord Drunkopa, please bestow upon us the most auspicious blessings of all the Kagyu Lamas. By this virtue, may I achieve the all-knowing state, and may all who travel on the waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death cross the ocean of samsara by defeating all enemies, confusion, the cause of suffering. Bodhicitta, the excellent and precious mind, where it is unborn, may it arise. Where it is born, may it not decline, but ever increase higher and higher. I pray that the Lama may have good health. I pray that the Lama may have long life. I pray that your Dharma activities spread far and wide. I pray that I may not be separated from you. As Manjushri, the warrior, realized the ultimate state, and as did Samantabhadra, I will follow in their path and fully dedicate all the merit for all sentient beings. By the blessings of the Buddha who attained the three kayas, by the blessing of the truth of the unchanging Dharma as such, by the blessing of the indivisible Sangha order, may the merit I share bear fruit. By the virtues collected in the three times, by myself and all beings in samsara and nirvana, and by the innate root of virtue, may I and all sentient beings quickly attain unsurpassed, perfect, complete, precious enlightenment. May the teachings of the great Drunkampa Ratnashri, who is omniscient Lord of the Dharma, master of interdependence, continue and increase through study, practice, contemplation, and meditation until the end of samsara. Glorious, holy, venerable, precious, kind root, and lineage lamas, divine assembly of yidams and assemblies of Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, yogins, yoginis, dakinis, dwelling in the 10 directions, please hear to my prayer. May the virtues collected and the 3 times by myself and all sentient beings in samsara and nirvana and the innate root of virtue not result in the 8 worldly concerns, the 4 causes of samsara or rebirth as a Shravaka or Pratya Buddha. May all mother sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me and mine, and obstructors who harm, misleading Maras and the hordes of demons, experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly attain unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. By the power of this vast root of virtue, may I benefit all beings through my body, speech, and mind. May the afflictions of desire, hatred, ignorance, arrogance, and jealousy not arise in my mind. May attachment to fame, reputation, wealth, honor, and concern for this life not arise for even a moment. May my mind stream be moistened by loving kindness, compassion, and bodhicitta, and through that, may I become a spiritual master with good qualities equal to the infinity of space. May I gain the supreme attainment of Mahamudra in this very life. May the torment of suffering not arise even at the time of my death. May I not die with negative thoughts. May I not die confused by wrong view. May I not experience an untimely death. May I die joyfully and happily in the great luminosity of the mind as such and the pervading clarity of Dharmata. May I, in any case, gain the supreme attainment of Mahamudra at the time of death or in the bardo. Om Ahang. Om Ahang.
May my body, speech, and
mind
become inseparable with the body,
speech, and mind
of the enlightened ones.